Okay, hello everybody. Today I want to continue my comparison between Elijah and John the Baptist. As you remember, we've been discussing how Elijah was called to confront the idolatry primarily of Jezebel in the days of ancient Israel, and we compared Elijah to John the Baptist. Jesus said that John the Baptist was the Elijah that was to come, primarily because he was also called to confront the idolatry of his day. And ironically enough, John the Baptist was confronting idolatry and also the sin of a woman named Herodias. Now, Herodias was the niece of Herod, and Herod had married Herodias after she was divorced from his brother. And so they were breaking the law of God in a couple of ways. One, they were relatives to, it was his brother's wife. And so John the Baptist was calling Herod out on this. Now, John the Baptist had a lot of street credit with Herod. Herod didn't want to put him to death. In fact, Herod was afraid of John the Baptist, but he was also seems afraid of his wife a little bit. So he put John the Baptist in prison, and at the prompting of his wife, you all know the story, his daughter, his stepdaughter, danced for him at his birthday, and he promised her anything up to half of his kingdom, and she ran to her mother, and her mother told the little girl Salome, she obviously wasn't a little girl at this point, told her to ask for the head of John the Baptist. And so that's what Salome asked for. Salome asked for the head of John the Baptist. And so it's an interesting story because the Bible doesn't really tell us why John the Baptist was beheaded rather than crucified or anything other than the fact that Herodias wanted his head. Okay, so he was beheaded. And what's interesting about this is that he was the Elijah that was to come. He confronted the idolatry of his day, and he confronted this sinful marriage between Herod and Herodias. And Herodias, just like Jezebel, tried to have him killed. And of course, Herodias was successful. Remember, Jezebel had Naboth killed when Ahab wanted his vineyard. There's just lots of parallels here. Now, the parallels don't end here, though. This is what makes it really interesting. In Revelation, we read about the souls under the altar that have been beheaded for their testimony to God and of their testimony for God. Now, what's interesting is that beheading is not a typical capital punishment in modern times. It wasn't typical in ancient Israel either. So what's interesting is that we have to stop and say, well, why are so many of these souls under the altar? Why have they been beheaded? What is beheading? Beheading is a Islamic punishment for idolatry, for blasphemy, and I think, now I'm speculating here, I'm definitely speculating, I believe that the idolatry of our day, the lukewarm, apostate system of the Church of Laodicea is going to build an alliance with radical Islam, and that those people, the true believers who stand up against the idolatry of the day, that confront the idolatry of the day, will actually be facing death by beheading. And many of them will give their lives for their true testimony of the Lord Jesus Christ and their refusal to take part in this apostate system. And that this beheading is something that ties us to John the Baptist. John the Baptist was the Elijah that was to come because he was called to confront the idolatry of his day, just as Elijah confronted the idolatry of his day. And we are called to confront the idolatry of our day. And I believe that that passage in the book of Revelation that talks about the souls under the altar that have been beheaded for their testimony of Jesus Christ demonstrates the connection that we will also suffer beheading for our testimony of the true gospel of Jesus Christ.